A poor black farmer inherited a rusty farmhouse, until his daughter uncovered a $500 million secret. Marcus Washington had always believed that bad luck was inherited, passed down through generations like eye color or the tendency toward bad knees. Standing in front of the crumbling farmhouse his father had left him, he felt that belief settle deeper into his bones. The February wind cut through his worn jacket as he stared at what the lawyer had generously called real estate. The house looked like it had been abandoned by hope itself. Paint peeled from its sides in long, sad strips, and the front porch sagged under the weight of decades. Half the windows were boarded up, and those that weren't should have been. The roof had more holes than a Sunday sermon had prayers, and weeds grew through the front steps like nature was trying to reclaim what never should have been built. "Daddy, you sure this is the right place?" his daughter Maya asked, stepping carefully over a rotted board. At 26, she had inherited her mother's sharp mind and her father's stubborn streak, a combination that had gotten her through law school despite every odds stacked against her. Marcus pulled the deed from his pocket for the 5th time that morning, as if the words might have changed during the drive from Atlanta. "Says right here, 127 Oakwood Road, Millerville, Georgia. 43 acres of prime agricultural land." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Prime for what? I can't imagine." Maya walked around the side of the house, her boots crunching on dead leaves. "How long did Grandpa Joe live here?" "Till the day he died, far as I know. Hadn't spoken to him in near 20 years. Marcus's voice carried old pain. "Your mama always said I was too proud, but that man. He had his head in the clouds, always talking about inventions and gadgets that would change the world. Meanwhile, we didn't have enough to eat some weeks." The land stretched out behind the house, rolling hills that might have been beautiful once, now covered in scrub brush and dotted with rusted farm equipment. A barn in the distance listed to one side like a drunk man trying to find his way home. To most people, it looked like 43 acres of nothing. To Marcus, it looked like 43 acres of problems he couldn't afford to fix. "The lawyer said there's no mortgage," Maya said, rejoining him. "That's something, right?" "Child, there's no mortgage because no bank would lend money on this place. Look at it." Marcus kicked at a loose board on the porch. "I can't sell it. Who'd buy it? Can't afford to fix it up. Can't even afford to tear it down proper." Maya studied her father's face. At 58, Marcus Washington had worked every day of his life since he was 12 years old. Construction, factory work, whatever paid enough to keep food on the table and Maya in school. His hands were scarred from decades of labor, his back bent from carrying loads too heavy for one man. The last thing he needed was another burden. But as Maya looked at the house, something stirred in her chest. Maybe it was the lawyer in her, trained to look for details others missed. Maybe it was something deeper, a connection to family history she'd never known. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something. "The lawyer said Grandpa Joe built this place himself," she said. "Built it wrong, looks like." Maya walked up the porch steps, testing each board before putting her full weight on it. "Daddy, what if there's more to this story? You always said Grandpa was smart, maybe too smart for his own good. What if he left us more than just a broken-down house?" Marcus followed her onto the porch, worry creasing his brow. "Maya, I know that look. That's your mama's look, right before she'd get some idea that would turn our world upside down. Don't go building castles in the air about this place." The front door hung open, its lock long since broken. Maya stepped inside, and immediately the air felt different, cooler, but not just from the temperature. The house felt like it was listening. The interior was a museum of abandonment. Dust covered everything like gray snow. Furniture sat where it had been left, as if Grandpa Joe had just stepped out for a walk and never come back. Old photographs lined the mantelpiece, their faces obscured by grime. Maya picked one up and wiped it clean, a tall, dignified man in overalls standing next to a much younger version of her father. "That's him," Marcus said quietly. "That's Papa." Maya studied the photograph. Even in the faded image, Grandpa Joe's eyes were bright, intelligent. They held a spark that reminded her of something, though she couldn't place what. "Tell me about him," she said. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, running his finger along the dusty mantle. "He was different. Always had his nose in some book or magazine, talking about science and inventions like he was going to change the world. Used to drive Mama crazy. She'd be worrying about how to pay for groceries, and he'd be sketching out designs for some contraption nobody would ever want." "What kind of inventions?" "All kinds. I remember one time he got excited about something to do with heating houses using the ground. Said the earth was like a big battery, storing up heat from the sun. Made no sense to me. Dirt's cold, isn't it? But he'd talk for hours about pipes and pumps and I don't know what all." Maya's heart quickened. Geothermal energy. She'd studied it in her environmental law classes. Clean, renewable energy that used the Earth's natural heat. It was cutting-edge technology now, but the principles had been understood for decades. She walked deeper into the house, her footsteps echoing in the empty rooms. The kitchen was a disaster, cabinets hanging open, dishes still in the sink from the last meal Grandpa Joe had ever eaten. But Maya barely noticed. She was listening to something else now, something that pulled her toward the back of the house. A narrow staircase led to the second floor, each step groaning under her weight. Marcus followed reluctantly, muttering about rotten wood and lawsuits waiting to happen. The upstairs was smaller than she'd expected, just 2 bedrooms and a bathroom that time had not been kind to. But it was in the smaller bedroom that Maya felt its strongest, that sense of secrets waiting to be discovered. The room was empty except for an old desk pushed against one wall, and a filing cabinet with its drawers hanging open. She knelt down and ran her hands along the baseboard, feeling for she didn't know what. "Maya, we should go," Marcus said. "This place isn't safe. Just give me a minute, Daddy." Her fingers found it, a section of baseboard that felt different from the rest. Looser. She pressed against it, and it shifted slightly. Heart pounding, she worked her fingernails into the gap and pulled. The board came away, revealing a hollow space in the wall. "Daddy, come here." Marcus knelt beside her as Maya reached into the hollow space. Her fingers touched something, paper, wrapped in what felt like oilcloth. She pulled it out carefully, her hands trembling with excitement. "What is it?" Maya unwrapped the bundle slowly. Inside were rolled papers, yellowed with age but still intact. She spread them out on the dusty floor, and both father and daughter leaned in to see. The papers were covered with detailed drawings, complex diagrams showing pipes, pumps, and systems Maya didn't fully understand. But in the bottom right corner of each page, written in careful script, was a name, Joseph Washington. And a date, 1978. "My God!" Maya whispered. "Daddy, these are blueprints. Technical drawings. Look at this." She pointed to a series of calculations along the margin. "These are specifications for some kind of heating and cooling system. And look at the detail. This isn't amateur work." Marcus stared at the papers, confusion and wonder warring on his face. "I don't understand. Papa was just a farmer. He never went to college, never had any formal training." Maya gathered the papers carefully, her mind racing. "Remember what you said about him talking about heating houses with the ground? Daddy, I think Grandpa Joe was working on geothermal energy systems. These drawings. They're incredibly sophisticated." She stood up, clutching the papers to her chest. The house seemed different now, not just a collection of broken boards and peeling paint, but a keeper of secrets. A place where a brilliant man had worked alone, dreaming of a better world. "There might be more," she said. "We need to search this whole house, every inch. If Grandpa Joe was working on inventions like this..." She trailed off, not wanting to voice the hope that was building in her chest. Marcus looked at his daughter, saw the excitement in her eyes, the way she held herself straighter now. It reminded him of someone, though it took him a moment to place who. Then it came to him. It was exactly how Papa used to look when he was talking about his ideas, back when Marcus was too young and too hungry to listen. "Maya," he said slowly, "your granddaddy used to say this house held stories. Stories that weren't ready to be told yet. Maya smiled, the first real smile she'd had since they'd arrived. Then maybe it's time we listen to what it has to say. The February wind still cut through the broken windows, and the house still looked like it might fall down any moment. But something had changed. The farmhouse that had seemed like nothing but problems and heartache was beginning to reveal itself as something else entirely, a treasure chest of forgotten dreams, waiting for the right person to find the key. As they prepared to leave for the day, Maya took one last look around the small bedroom. Tomorrow, she would come back with proper tools and start searching in earnest. Tonight, she would research everything she could find about geothermal energy systems and patents from the late 1970s. She had a feeling, stronger than intuition, deeper than hope, that this rusty farmhouse was about to change their lives forever. Maya returned to the farmhouse the next morning with her laptop, a magnifying glass, and a determination that had kept her awake most of the night. She'd spent hours researching geothermal energy systems online, and what she'd learned made her hands shake with possibility. The technology that companies were calling revolutionary today had theoretical foundations dating back decades. Marcus met her at the house with coffee and worried eyes. "You sure about this, baby girl? I barely slept, thinking about you getting your hopes up." "Daddy, look at this." Maya spread the blueprints across the kitchen table, now cleared of decades of dust. In the morning light streaming through the windows, the papers revealed details she'd missed in yesterday's excitement. "See these calculations here? And this diagram showing the heat pump configuration?" She pulled out her laptop and showed him a modern geothermal system diagram she'd found online. "Look how similar they are." "But Daddy, these drawings are from 1978. The first commercial geothermal heat pump wasn't widely available until the 1980s. Marcus studied both images, his calloused finger tracing the lines on his father's drawings. "You saying Papa was ahead of his time?" "I'm saying Papa might have been decades ahead of his time." Maya's voice trembled with excitement. "Look at this signature, see how clear it is? Joseph Washington, with the date right there. And look at this notation in the corner." She pointed to small text Marcus had to squint to read. "Patent pending application filed June 15, 1978. The coffee cup slipped from Marcus's hands, shattering on the floor. "Patent pending? Papa never said nothing about no patent." Maya was already unrolling another sheet, her heart racing. This one showed a complete residential installation, underground pipes, heat exchangers, distribution systems. Every component was labeled with precise measurements and specifications. The level of detail was staggering. "Daddy, this isn't just one invention. This is a complete geothermal heating and cooling system. Look." She pointed to different sections of the drawings. "He's got solutions for different soil types, varying climate conditions, even backup systems for extreme weather." As she studied the papers more carefully, Maya began to see the full scope of her grandfather's work. There were modifications for commercial buildings, calculations for energy efficiency that wouldn't look out of place in a modern engineering textbook, and something else that made her catch her breath. "Oh my God, Daddy! Look at this." In the corner of one blueprint was a small sketch Maya had initially overlooked. It showed a community layout, dozens of homes connected to a central geothermal system. Below it, in Grandpa Joe's careful handwriting, were the words, "Sustainable Community Model Projected Energy Savings 75%. He wasn't just thinking about one house, Maya whispered. He was thinking about entire neighborhoods. Sustainable communities powered by clean energy. Marcus sank into one of the remaining kitchen chairs. "I don't understand. If Papa had all this figured out, why were we so poor? Why did he die in this broken-down house without a penny to his name?" Maya was wondering the same thing. She carefully rolled up the blueprints and pulled out her phone. "I need to make some calls. If Grandpa Joe really filed for patents, there should be records." 2 hours later, she hung up from her third call to the U.S. Patent Office, her face pale. Marcus had been pacing the kitchen, growing more agitated with each phone call. "Well? There are records, Daddy. Joseph Washington filed 3 separate patent applications in 1978. All for geothermal energy systems. Maya's voice was quiet, controlled. But here's the thing, they were all challenged. Challenged by who? Maya pulled up an email on her phone. A company called Thermodyne Corporation. They filed competing claims, saying the technology wasn't novel enough for patent protection. The applications got tied up in legal disputes that lasted for years. Marcus frowned. Never heard of no Thermodyne. I hadn't either until today. But guess what Thermodyne Corporation became in 1985? Maya looked up at her father, her eyes bright with anger. Clean Tech Industries. One of the biggest renewable energy companies in the world today. The silence stretched between them as the implications sank in. Marcus slowly sat down across from his daughter. You saying they stole Papa's ideas? I'm saying that while Grandpa Joe was fighting for his patents in court, probably with no money for good lawyers, Thermodyne was busy developing remarkably similar systems. Systems that made them billions of dollars over the next 4 decades. Maya unrolled another blueprint, and this time she noticed something that made her blood run cold. In the margin, written in different handwriting, was a note. Meeting with TD Rep March 15, 1979. Contract discussions. Daddy, I think Grandpa Joe met with them. I think they knew exactly what he'd invented. Marcus stared at the notation, his jaw tightening. What happened to his patents? That's the crazy part. They were never officially rejected. The challenges were withdrawn in 1981, but by then, Maya scrolled through her phone. By then, the patents had expired due to non-payment of fees. But here's the twist. According to patent law, if the original challenges were fraudulent or if proper procedures weren't followed, the rights could theoretically be restored to the original inventor's estate. Meaning us? Maya nodded slowly. Meaning us. She looked around the kitchen where her grandfather had once sat, probably at this very table, working on designs that would change the world. She imagined him here alone, fighting a battle he didn't understand against forces he couldn't match, slowly watching his dreams disappear into legal paperwork and corporate maneuvering. Daddy, do you remember Grandpa ever talking about meetings with businessmen? Or legal troubles? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You know, now that you mention it. I remember him being real excited about something when I was maybe 16. Said he was going to make sure our family never went hungry again. Then, few months later, he got real quiet. Real bitter. Started drinking more. What changed? I don't know. But I remember him saying something once, after he'd had too much whiskey. Said the system was rigged against people like us, that they'd steal the thoughts right out of your head if they could make money off them. Maya carefully gathered the blueprints, her mind racing with possibilities and questions. She thought about the family stories, the grandfather she'd never known, dismissed as a dreamer and a drunk. The father who'd worked himself to the bone because he was too proud to ask for help that probably wasn't coming anyway. Daddy, I think we need to dig deeper. If Grandpa Joe really invented this technology, and if Clean Tech Industries built their empire on his work. She didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus understood. They both understood. This wasn't just about old papers and forgotten dreams anymore. This was about justice delayed but not denied, about a legacy that had been stolen and might finally be reclaimed. Outside, the February wind still rattled the windows of the old farmhouse. But inside, something had shifted. The house that held secrets was beginning to give them up, one devastating revelation at a time. Maya spent the next week buried in archives, both digital and physical. She'd taken time off from her job at the Atlanta law firm, telling her boss she was dealing with a family estate matter, which was technically true, though she couldn't have imagined how true when she first said it. The Georgia State Archives in Morrow became her second home. She pulled every record she could find about patent disputes from the late 1970s, business incorporations, and anything related to Thermodyne Corporation. What she discovered made her stomach turn. Daddy, you need to see this, she said, calling Marcus from the archive reading room. Can you meet me at the house tonight? I've got something to show you. That evening, Maya spread her findings across the farmhouse kitchen table like a prosecutor laying out evidence. Marcus arrived with takeout Chinese food, but neither of them touched it as Maya began to explain what she'd uncovered. "Remember I told you about Thermodyne Corporation challenging Grandpa's patents?" she began, pulling out photocopied documents. "Well, I found their incorporation papers." Thermodyne was founded in March 1978, 3 months before Grandpa Joe filed his first patent application. Marcus frowned. "So they were already in business?" "That's just it. They weren't really in business. Look at this." Maya showed him a business license document. Thermodyne had no employees, no office address except a P.O. box, and no business activity for their first 2 years. It was a shell company. She pulled out another document. But in 1979, right around the time of that meeting Grandpa wrote about, Thermodyne suddenly got very active. They hired engineers, leased office space, and started developing geothermal systems. Using Papa's ideas? Maya's jaw tightened. Using Papa's exact ideas. "Look at this." She showed him a Thermodyne technical manual from 1980. The diagrams were nearly identical to Grandpa Joe's blueprints, just redrawn with company logos. "But here's the really sick part," Maya continued, her voice rising with anger. "I found correspondence between Thermodyne and their patent attorneys. They knew Grandpa Joe's patents were legitimate. They knew his technology was revolutionary. Their whole strategy was to tie him up in legal challenges until he ran out of money to fight." Marcus studied the letters Maya had photocopied. Even with his limited legal knowledge, the corporate strategy was clear: overwhelm a poor black inventor with legal fees and procedural delays until he gave up. "There's more," Maya said grimly. "I found a 1981 internal memo from Thermodyne to their investors." She pulled out the document that had made her physically ill when she'd first read it. "It talks about acquiring innovative technologies from individual inventors through strategic legal pressure. They weren't just stealing from Grandpa. This was their business model." Marcus read the memo twice, his hands shaking with rage. "They targeted people like Papa on purpose? Poor inventors, especially minorities, who couldn't afford to fight back. The memo actually says, and I quote, 'Individual inventors from disadvantaged backgrounds rarely have the resources for extended patent litigation.'" Maya's voice cracked. "Daddy, they destroyed people's lives as a matter of policy." The most damning evidence was what Maya had found in Cleantech Industries' own corporate history. When Thermodyne rebranded as Cleantech in 1985, they'd published a company timeline that completely erased the origin of their core technology. According to their official history, their geothermal systems were developed entirely in-house by our team of brilliant engineers. "I found the names of those engineers," Maya said, pulling out personnel records she'd obtained through public information requests. 3 of them. All hired in 1979, all from major corporations, all with no previous experience in geothermal technology. "So where'd they learn it?" Maya pointed to a training schedule she'd discovered. "From studying Grandpa Joe's patent applications." Thermodyne had their lawyers request copies of all the technical specifications during the challenge process. Then they used those specifications to train their own engineers. The scope of the theft was breathtaking. Cleantech hadn't just stolen one idea, they'd built their entire corporate foundation on Grandpa Joe's work. Their signature community geothermal systems, the ones that had made them billions, were virtually identical to the sustainable community model he'd sketched in 1978. "Maya," Marcus said quietly, "if this is all true, if we can prove it, the patents may have expired, but there's something called unjust enrichment in the law. If we can prove Cleantech built their empire on stolen technology, they could be liable for decades of profits." Maya had run preliminary calculations. Cleantech Industries was now worth over $50 billion. Their geothermal division alone generated billions in annual revenue. If even a fraction of that was based on Grandpa Joe's stolen technology. "But here's what really gets me," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. "I found an interview Cleantech's CEO gave to Forbes magazine in 2010. He talks about how proud he is that the company lifted itself up from nothing and created revolutionary technology through pure innovation. The man built a fortune on Grandpa's work and then has the nerve to lecture about self-made success. Marcus pushed the Chinese food containers away, his appetite gone completely. What do we do now? Now we have to be careful, Maya said. I've been making a lot of inquiries, requesting a lot of documents. If Clean Tech is monitoring for threats to their corporate history, and a company this big definitely would be, they might already know someone's digging into their past. As if summoned by her words, Maya's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Maya Washington? This is James Crawford from Crawford and Associates. We represent Clean Tech Industries. The voice was smooth, professional, and somehow threatening. We understand you've been researching some historical matters related to our client. We'd like to arrange a meeting to discuss your interests. Maya's blood went cold. She looked at her father, who was watching her face with growing alarm. I'm not sure what you're talking about, she said carefully. Ms. Washington, we're prepared to make this very simple for you. There may be some compensation available for your time and discretion. Why don't we meet tomorrow? Say 2 p.m. at your father's new property on Oakwood Road? The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, her hands trembling. Who was that? Marcus asked. Clean Tech Industries, Maya whispered. They know exactly what we found. And they know exactly where to find us. Outside the farmhouse, neither of them noticed the black sedan that had been parked on the road for the past hour, or the man inside taking photographs with a telephoto lens. The corporate machinery that had destroyed Grandpa Joe was already moving to protect itself, 47 years later. The next day at exactly 2 p.m., 3 black cars pulled into the farmhouse driveway. Maya watched from the kitchen window as 6 people in expensive suits emerged, 5 men and 1 woman, all carrying briefcases that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. Daddy, stay close to me, Maya whispered. Let me do the talking. The lead man was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of confident smile that came from never losing. He extended his hand as Maya opened the door. Ms. Washington, I'm James Crawford. Thank you for agreeing to see us. I don't remember agreeing to anything, Maya replied, not taking his hand. Crawford's smile didn't waver. May we come in? I think you'll find our conversation illuminating. Against her better judgment, Maya led them into the kitchen. The corporate team spread out around the room like they were conducting a military operation. One man immediately began photographing the blueprints still spread on the table. Another started taking measurements of the room itself. Interesting place, Crawford said, looking around with obvious distaste. We understand you've been researching some historical patents. Ancient history, really. History that's still making your company billions. Maya shot back. Crawford chuckled. Ms. Washington, you're a lawyer. You understand that patent law is complex. Ideas evolve, technologies develop independently. Just because 2 inventors work on similar concepts doesn't mean one stole from the other. The woman stepped forward, opening her briefcase. I'm Sarah Chin, Clean Tech's head of legal affairs. We're prepared to offer your family a generous settlement to avoid any misunderstandings about our corporate history. She placed the check on the kitchen table. Maya's breath caught. It was made out to Marcus Washington for $2 million. That's a lot of money for a misunderstanding, Maya said carefully. Consider it compensation for your time and research, Crawford said. All we asked in return is your discretion. No public statements about your grandfather's work, no legal challenges to our patents, no contact with media or historians about these matters. Marcus stepped forward, staring at the check. $2 million. More money than he'd ever imagined having. Enough to fix every problem in his life, to ensure Maya never had to worry about student loans or mortgage payments. And if we don't take it? Marcus asked quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Crawford's smile became something sharper, more predatory. Mr. Washington, I'd hate for your family to go through what your father went through. Legal battles are expensive, time-consuming, stressful. He paused meaningfully. Sometimes they destroy people. Are you threatening us? Maya demanded. I'm offering you a reality check, Crawford replied. You're a junior associate at a mid-tier law firm. Your father works construction. We're a $50 billion corporation with unlimited legal resources. If you try to fight us, we'll tie you up in court for decades. We'll challenge every document, dispute every claim, file motion after motion until you're bankrupt and broken. One of the other men spoke up. We know about your student loans, Ms. Washington. $140,000. We know about your father's medical bills from his back surgery last year. We know your mother died of cancer because she couldn't afford better treatment. Maya felt like she'd been slapped. How dare you? We know because we make it our business to know. Crawford interrupted. We've been protecting our corporate interests for 47 years. We know exactly how to handle situations like this. The man who'd been photographing continued his work, now focusing on the margins of Grandpa Joe's blueprints where his handwriting was clearest. Interesting, he murmured. These drawings could be interpreted many different ways. Hard to prove their original work versus copies of existing designs. What's that supposed to mean? Marcus asked. Crawford straightened his tie. It means that if you force us to fight, we'll argue that your father copied our technology, not the other way around. We have corporate resources, established timelines, witness statements. What do you have? Some old papers found in a wall? Maya felt the trap closing around them. She understood now how they'd destroyed Grandpa Joe, not just with legal fees, but with this psychological warfare, this systematic demolition of hope and dignity. The offer expires when we leave, Saracen said, tapping the check. $2 million, or a legal battle you can't win against opponents who've never lost. Marcus looked at his daughter, then at the check, then at his father's blueprints spread across the table. 47 years ago, Grandpa Joe had faced this same choice: fight impossible odds or accept defeat. He'd chosen to fight, and it had killed him. Maya, Marcus said softly, maybe we should think about this. $2 million. That's more than Papa ever dreamed of. It's not about the money, Daddy, Maya replied, though her voice shook. It's about justice. It's about the truth. Crawford smiled coldly. Justice? Truth? Ms. Washington, this is business. Your grandfather was a small man with big dreams who got crushed by forces beyond his understanding. Don't make the same mistake. He gestured to his team, and they began packing up their materials. You have until 5 p.m. to decide. Take the money and disappear, or spend the rest of your lives fighting a battle you've already lost. As they prepared to leave, Crawford turned back one final time. Oh, and Ms. Washington? That law firm where you work. Clean Tech Industries is one of their biggest clients. I'd hate for your research activities to create any conflicts of interest for your employer. The threat hung in the air long after the black cars had disappeared down the dirt road. Maya stared at the check on the table, a fortune that could solve every problem in their lives, or a chain that would bind them to silence forever. What do we do? Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Maya looked around the farmhouse, at her grandfather's blueprints, at the walls that had hidden secrets for nearly 50 years, at the legacy of genius and injustice that had been passed down to them. For the first time since this all began, she truly understood what they were up against. But she also understood something else. Sometimes the fight itself was more important than the odds of winning. At 4:58 p.m., Maya called James Crawford. Her hands were steady as she dialed, her voice clear when he answered. We're not taking your money, she said simply, then hung up. The legal war that followed was unlike anything Maya had experienced in her short career. Within 48 hours of rejecting Cleantech's offer, she was fired from her law firm. Budget cuts, they said, though everyone knew the real reason. But Maya had prepared for this. Before making the call, she'd contacted David Rosen, a legendary civil rights attorney who specialized in taking on corporate giants. This is the case I've been waiting for my whole career, Rosen told them during their first meeting. At 73, he was still sharp as a blade, his eyes blazing with the same fire that had helped him win landmark cases against tobacco companies and pharmaceutical giants. Corporate theft of intellectual property from minority inventors. It's the untold story of American innovation. The case that became Washington v. Clean Tech Industries began 18 months later in the U. South District Court for the Northern District of Georgia. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, law students, corporate executives, and civil rights activists all crammed into every available seat. The story had captured national attention. A poor black farming family taking on a $50 billion corporation, armed with blueprints hidden in walls for nearly 50 years. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table next to her father and Rosen, facing an army of 12 corporate lawyers led by James Crawford. The contrast was stark, their modest legal team versus Clean Tech's million-dollar defense squad. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Rosen began his opening statement. This case is about the theft of the American dream. Joseph Washington was a brilliant inventor whose revolutionary ideas were stolen by a corporation that built an empire on his genius while he died poor and forgotten. Crawford's opening was smooth, polished, designed to make the jury doubt everything they thought they knew. This case is about opportunistic plaintiffs trying to rewrite history for profit. Clean Tech Industries developed its technology through legitimate research and development. These so-called stolen ideas were simply parallel innovations, the kind of independent discovery that happens constantly in rapidly evolving fields. But Maya and Rosen had spent 18 months building an ironclad case. Their first witness was Dr. Angela Foster, a patent expert from MIT who had analyzed Grandpa Joe's blueprints. In 40 years of studying patent applications, I have never seen such detailed, innovative designs for geothermal systems from 1978. Dr. Foster testified. The level of technical sophistication suggests an inventor decades ahead of his time. These are not the work of an amateur tinkerer, they represent genuine breakthrough innovation. Maya took the stand to present the documentary evidence. Her voice was strong as she walked the jury through the timeline. Grandpa Joe's patent applications, Thermaldyne's suspicious founding, the internal memos targeting minority inventors, the systematic legal challenges designed to bankrupt individual innovators. The evidence shows a deliberate, coordinated effort to steal my grandfather's technology. Maya testified. They didn't just take his ideas, they took his legacy, his family's future, and his place in history. The most dramatic moment came when Marcus testified about his father's final years. The courtroom was silent as he described Grandpa Joe's decline, the drinking, the bitterness, the brilliant man who died believing his life's work had been worthless. He used to say they stole the dreams right out of his head, Marcus said, his voice breaking. I thought he was just talking crazy from the whiskey. I never knew how right he was. Clean Tech's defense was brutal and methodical. They brought in their own experts who questioned the originality of Grandpa Joe's designs. They argued that geothermal technology was obvious to anyone skilled in the art. By 1978, they attacked the chain of custody of the blueprints, suggesting they could have been created recently and artificially aged. Their star witness was Dr. Robert Hamilton, Clean Tech's chief engineer, who had been with the company since 1982. Under Crawford's questioning, Hamilton painted a picture of dedicated corporate researchers working tirelessly to develop revolutionary technology. But on cross-examination, Rosen destroyed him. Dr. Hamilton, you testified that Clean Tech developed its core geothermal technology entirely in-house, correct? That's correct. Yet this internal memo from 1980 shows your team studying Joseph Washington's patent applications in detail. Were you lying then or are you lying now? Hamilton's face went white as Rosen displayed the smoking gun document Maya had found in the archives. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Expert witnesses battled over technical specifications. Historians testified about the systematic exclusion of black inventors from mainstream recognition. Former Thermaldyne employees, granted immunity, admitted to studying Grandpa Joe's patents to develop their own systems. The most powerful evidence came from an unexpected source, Jonathan Mitchell, Thermaldyne's former patent attorney, now dying of cancer and seeking to clear his conscience. In a videotaped deposition, he revealed the company's true strategy. We knew Joseph Washington's patents were legitimate and revolutionary. Mitchell testified, his voice weak but clear. Our job was to delay them long enough for the company to develop competing technology and establish market dominance. We weren't fighting the patents because they were invalid. We were fighting them because they were too good. As closing arguments began, the weight of history filled the courtroom. This wasn't just about money or patents. It was about justice delayed for nearly half a century, about recognizing the genius of a man who died believing he was a failure. Joseph Washington was a visionary who saw the future of clean energy when others couldn't imagine it. Rosen told the jury. Clean tech industries built a $50 billion empire on his stolen dreams. Today, you have the power to restore his legacy and his family's rightful place in history. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they finally returned, the foreman's voice echoed through the packed courtroom. We find in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts. The courtroom erupted. Maya collapsed into her father's arms, tears streaming down both their faces. The jury had not only found clean tech liable for intellectual property theft but had awarded damages of $500 million, one of the largest settlements in patent theft history. Justice, 47 years delayed, had finally arrived. 2 years after the verdict, Maya stood in the same spot where she'd first discovered the hollow wall. But the farmhouse was transformed beyond recognition. The rotting boards had been replaced with sustainable bamboo siding, the broken windows now gleamed with triple-pane glass, and the sagging porch had become a welcoming wraparound veranda lined with solar panels. But the most remarkable change wasn't visible from the outside. The geothermal system is running at 97% efficiency. Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's lead engineer, reported as she joined Maya on the porch. Your grandfather's designs were so far ahead of their time that even with modern improvements, we're only achieving about 15% better performance than his original specifications. Maya smiled, watching a group of engineering students from Georgia Tech taking measurements around the property. The Joseph Washington Institute for Renewable Energy Innovation had become exactly what her grandfather had envisioned in his sketches, a living laboratory where clean energy technology could be developed, tested, and shared freely with the world. The community installation is ahead of schedule, Dr. Kim continued. All 47 houses in the development will be connected to the central geothermal system by next month. Just like your grandfather drew it. The Oakwood Sustainable Community was Maya's proudest achievement. Using Grandpa Joe's community model blueprints as the foundation, they'd built an entire neighborhood that ran on 100% renewable energy. Each house was designed to different income levels, from modest starter homes to larger family residences, ensuring that clean energy wasn't just for the wealthy. Marcus emerged from the farmhouse carrying a pitcher of lemonade, his face bright with pride and purpose. At 60, he'd discovered a new calling as the Institute's community outreach coordinator. The man who'd once thought his father was a failed dreamer now spent his days telling schoolchildren about the grandfather who'd seen the future before anyone else believed it was possible. The reporters from 60 Minutes are here, he announced. They want to interview you by the Memorial Garden. Maya nodded, though she still felt overwhelmed by the media attention. The Washington v. Clean Tech case had become a landmark legal precedent, cited in intellectual property courses and civil rights seminars across the country. But more than that, it had sparked a national conversation about the untold stories of minority inventors whose contributions had been erased from history. The Memorial Garden was Maya's favorite part of the property. Designed around the original oak tree where Grandpa Joe used to sit and sketch his ideas, it featured bronze plaques honoring dozens of African American inventors whose work had been stolen or forgotten. At the center stood a life-size statue of Joseph Washington, his eyes looking toward the future, his hands holding the blueprints that had changed everything. The settlement money had done more than fund the institute. Maya had established a legal defense fund specifically for minority inventors facing corporate intimidation. The Washington Foundation had already helped 12 families fight patent theft cases, winning settlements totaling over $200 million. Clean tech industries, meanwhile, had never recovered from the legal and public relations disaster. Their stock price had plummeted 40% in the wake of the trial, and congressional hearings had exposed similar theft schemes targeting other inventors. James Crawford had been quietly forced into retirement, and the company had agreed to pay licensing fees for their use of Joseph Washington's technology, fees that would continue in perpetuity. "Ms. Washington," called the 60 Minutes correspondent as Maya approached the memorial garden. "2 years later, how does it feel to have restored your grandfather's legacy?" Maya paused beside the statue, touching the bronze hand that held the blueprints. "It feels like we've completed something that was started 47 years ago. But more than that, we've created something that will outlast all of us." The interview covered the Institute's achievements, the breakthrough research being conducted by graduate students, the job training programs for local residents, the free energy consultations for low-income families wanting to reduce their carbon footprint. But Maya was most proud of the scholarship program they'd established, providing full college funding for young inventors from underserved communities. As the camera crew packed up, Maya walked through the farmhouse one final time. The kitchen where she'd first spread out Grandpa Joe's blueprints now served as a conference room where the world's leading renewable energy experts collaborated on new technologies. The bedroom where she'd discovered the hollow wall had become a museum, displaying the original blueprints alongside the story of their discovery and legal vindication. But the most meaningful addition was in Grandpa Joe's old workshop, which they'd restored exactly as he'd left it. His original workbench remained unchanged, tools still arranged precisely where he'd placed them decades ago. Above the bench, in a climate-controlled display case, sat his personal journal, pages filled with calculations, sketches, and dreams for a cleaner world. The final entry, dated just weeks before his death, brought tears to Maya's eyes every time she read it. "They can steal my patents, but they cannot steal the truth. Someday, someone will understand what I was trying to build. Someday, the world will be ready for these ideas." That evening, as the sun set over the Oakwood Sustainable Community, Maya stood on the farmhouse porch with her father. Solar panels glinted on every rooftop, and the nearly invisible geothermal systems hummed quietly underground, providing clean energy exactly as Grandpa Joe had envisioned. "You think he knows?" Marcus asked quietly. Maya watched children playing in the community park, their laughter carried on the evening breeze. Tomorrow, those same children would attend the Institute's summer science camp, learning about renewable energy and innovation. Some of them might become the next generation of inventors, their dreams protected by the legal precedents her case had established. "I think he always knew this day would come," Maya replied. "The house kept his secrets for 47 years, waiting for the right person to find them. It was always meant to be more than just a farmhouse, Daddy. It was meant to be hope." In the distance, the bronze statue of Joseph Washington caught the last rays of sunlight, his face turned toward a future where his dreams had finally found their home. The poor black farmer's inheritance had become exactly what it was always meant to be, not just a legacy of justice, but a foundation for change that would last forever.